And that's why I don't jump on trains.
And with that, everybody, welcome back. We are here again, live at ISTE Live. Live. How many more lives can we get in there? That's great. And yes, we're talking train jumping and all sorts of things with our guests today. But before we get into it, Adam, we always have our opening debate, and we'll bring Zandra Jo in this as well in just a second. Crust or no crust? But you're not talking about pizza. No. You put this down in the notes because I was thinking, oh, we have pizza crust or no crust. You're talking pancakes.
Pancakes.
So explain pancake crust, because in my mind, where's the crust on a pancake?
You got it on the outside, that outside
dried edge.
Yes, you put just enough grease in it when you're frying it up, where it just gets nice and crispy, where you have that little when you bite into it. I don't need the whole thing crispy. I just need those edges crispy.
See, I go fluffy, so I don't usually get the crispy edges. I get the kind of the taller, but there's a little bit almost like just barely cooked enough. I want them to be kind of not undercooked, but I don't know. This is really the hardest question I've ever had to answer. I don't know why it is, but it is.
Crust will change a lot.
It will. But enough about us and our thoughts. Dr. Zandra Jo Galvan, she is the superintendent at Greenfield School District in the great state of California. And where are you on the debate of pancakes, Zandra Jo? See, tell us what you think.
Pancakes. I like them fluffy in the center. I like that crust on the edge. And you're right. Just a little bit of that little extra oil around there makes it a little crispy. It's kind of like the muffins, the corn muffins. You want the little edge.
Oh, yeah.
Or the yes, I did do that.
It sounds so cool, man. This is one of those ASMR podcasts where it's like sounds in the microphone.
That's it. Or like the stuffing on Thanksgiving, all that. Just that little edge.
Okay. Yeah. Follow-up question, which I usually don't ask, but I'm going to ask now. You putting stuff in your pancakes, or are you a plain buttermilk?
Plain buttermilk. I love that. However, I do love pumpkin pie like filling in there every once in a while during the comfort months.
Comfort months.
So I gotta ask you this, since you mentioned that you went to dressing on brownies. Are you an edge brownie person or a center brownie person?
All about the edges.
Okay.
Oh, see, center. Maybe that's what I'm doing wrong in my life. I need to start figuring this out. This is really hard-hitting topics today on the podcast, folks, as you can tell. Z, I see you online, and if you guys have ever been around this amazing person, you can't not smile. You bring an energy and enthusiasm in a position, to be honest, in this nation, the superintendent, which is, you guys are getting beat up. It's school boards, it's just policies and politics and everything else. How do you keep or continue to bring joy into your role as superintendent?
Sure. It's really about the culture and the climate within the school district, and really focusing on people first, and making sure that, when you pay attention to the things that they do and celebrate the differences that we have, but also the things that bring us together. I love going into classrooms. I love being on the playgrounds. I love seeing teachers teach. I love my teammates, like making up some really good pancakes in the kitchen, in our cafeterias. And I love chasing kids on the playground and racing them on tricycles. Like, all of that is just joyful. And when you start your day with joy like that, like every single day when I'm in the district, every single morning I'm somewhere in a school, because then that just sets the tone for the rest of the day. And then I can head to the office and take care of the paperwork, or take care of the report that needs to be done, or what have you. But the joyful moments is so important. And I think I came early on, like my mom and dad were born and raised in West Texas, the Bible Belt, Christian family, and I'm the baby of 6. And so they also, baby of 6, 9 years between me and them.
Oh, wow.
By design.
You got away with it. You got away with everything.
Everything. And they couldn't do anything until the baby was asleep, or the baby was taken care of. And so I just got to chase around my big brothers and sisters, and they got to do fun things with me. I got to do fun things with them. And so just that joy is just part of kind of how I'm wired. Yeah.
I love that. Whenever I was having bad days in my role as director, my wife would always tell me, go to a school. Yeah. Go work with kindergarten and first grade. You got to get back to the mission. What's the reason why you're here? Because you're right. You can get pulled into the paperwork and get pulled into the bureaucratic BS, so to speak.
So Dr. Z.
Oh yeah, the doctor's in the house.
Tell us, how did you go from being, one of 6 to becoming a superintendent?
Yeah. So I think also there's probably some research out there about babies and just confidence level, and how everyone kind of just pours into us. So definitely been a confident kid, athlete, doing those kinds of things, and wanting to be a good communicator and very empathetic. We learn a lot of our things through the mistakes of others or watching people do things like that doesn't feel good to us. And so then when we're in charge or we get to do something, we do it kind of the way where we're very encompassing and inclusive of people. So leaving that way, I think I've had opportunities come my way where teaching, I love teaching. Spent a long time teaching, 15 years in the classroom before I stepped out to be an academic coach.
Yep.
Yeah, I did kindergarten, third grade, middle school. But then when I stepped out, I got to help teachers. So I coached in the state of California, different places, but then also within my district. And then after that, someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, you're pretty good at those kinds of relationship things and bringing people in. You make people feel good and, seen, valued, and heard. And so how about some administration? I'm like, what the heck? Let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
So I did. And I did that for 10 years. I was a director, administrator, did associate superintendent of all things educational services, got to know so much about those kinds of things and got really smart about budget, titles, all the titles
All
for
the
federal
stuff, yeah.
government, migrant education, English learners, GATE, teacher induction program. So I got to do a lot of different things in that capacity and then lead teams so that naturally when the superintendency kind of came in, I was like, all right, let's see.
Yeah.
Because in positions, if you're not a frontline administrator like a principal or a superintendent, you always have to ask someone else for permission.
Yeah.
And that was tough. I didn't like that. I didn't like having to, can we do this program? I know it's really good for kids. Well, I don't know. Or can we do this? This is really good for kids. Well,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Try to work one time. But
as a principal, as a superintendent, you get to say yes.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing. Like here at ISTE, going into the exhibit hall and it's like Disneyland and bringing my team, it's like go, like hang out, ride some rides, get some cards, show them what you want. And then just tell me why it's good for kids. And I get to say yes.
I love it.
So that's the beautiful thing about, kind of getting to that next level. And someone believed in me and, gave me a chance, my board. So still there going into year number 8.
Wow.
Which is kind of uncommon. Yeah.
That is the path you took, I think is a powerful one too. And I think that all those things you just talked about, like you said, they build you into this position of superintendent because you learned in the various roles.
Yeah.
In the state of Texas, we do it a little differently. You're the head football coach. Then you become the principal. Then you become the superintendent. And there's all that matters. You're from West Texas. You know what I'm talking about. So being a woman of color, a minority in this field, especially, I mean, thinking, and I know California might be a little bit different, but not too much different than most states. Because in Texas, I want to say the numbers were maybe less than 20% female superintendents. What has that been like? Have you felt supported? Have you felt like you've had to overcome certain things, or do you feel like when you walk into a room and there's mostly a bunch of guys standing around talking, how do you get your voice heard in that sense?
Sure. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about colorism, along with the racism, and I do not forget that I'm a light-skinned Latina. So within this color of my skin, I have privilege. I really do. And my mom was a very light-skinned Latina. My dad, very dark-skinned Latino. And so within there, I turned out color like my mom. And so I know that as a person of color, I am treated a little differently because I can pass for white or Portuguese or Italian. And so I'm led into spaces that perhaps my darker skinned sisters and brothers wouldn't be allowed to do that.
Interesting.
But within that, I know I have privilege. And so it's how I use that privilege to open doors and leave those doors open for my sisters and my brothers. And so within that, it is a very small kind of grouping of Black and brown, Asian around the United States. And so I gravitate to those groups to help kind of figure out what their hopes and dreams are and how they can support them in that. I get to mentor, with ASA, with DA, with some of our affinity groups like ALAS and Kelson, California, get to mentor females and males around aspiring superintendencies so that they too can see themselves in those positions. And so much that I did my research around Black and brown and increasing the superintendencies across the nation. But it is lonely, and I know this, I have to gravitate to those people to keep me sane and to understand kind of what our calling is and how it's so important to meet the needs of our kids, because if we don't do it, no one else will. But also within that, I can't screw it up.
Right.
Like I can
That extra pressure.
A lot of pressure on
mess
you. Yeah.
it up. Like if I screw up this position and do something wrong within it, I screw it up for every Latina after me. Every single one of them is going to be like, won't have I remember when that one did it. Oh, forget about it. Don't give this one a chance. Go back. Let's go back to.
Let's go backwards. Yeah.
Yeah, that's that like minority burden when you're in those positions, because especially if you're the first to do that, you're like, I can't mess this up.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, Yes. And I will tell you that I got to, in my dissertation and my research.
Yeah. Tell me more about that.
My research was all about educational excellence across the nation, how superintendents of color transform education in spaces and places. And so I got to interview 12 superintendents, 6 Black, 6 brown, three male, 3 female in both of those categories. And they are not just any superintendent, they were like powerhouse superintendents, like national award winners, local state award winners, organizational heads, like people who you if I were to say their names, you're like, oh man, that one right there. And then to study their trends of what they've done. And so I looked through a few different frames, a structural frame, the symbolic frame, human resources frame, and then how we lead in those different areas. And the one thing about superintendents of color that all of them shared, this was like 100% of them said, when we walk into spaces, we do have that sense of responsibility, but we also have this sense of political awareness that we have to advocate because we know through our lived experience what we've endured in our pain and suffering, or those families that, or our own personal families, pain and suffering that no one gets unless you're a person of color and have transcended through that. Like most of our families have come here when you're a person of color through some kind of pain or suffering. So for you to feel that and see that or hear about it through the stories that have been told to us, my position has even more like just responsibility and tribute to my ancestors because I know that they suffered or overcame adversity for me to be in this space. And so that in itself is so critical. And every one of them said, when I walk into space, I need to make it known that I'm there and that I have something to say and I'm going to command, I'm going to sit taller, I'm going to assert myself in a certain way so that my voice is heard, so that people don't dismiss me. The other part of that is when I meet with families, when I advocate for the children that I serve, I know how important that is to break them free from the cycle of poverty because I've either lived that or my family has overcome that or family members are still in that. And so all of that within the research was just beautiful to see how they design culture, school culture and climate was one of my big questions. And the other one is organizational structures that allow superintendents to have staying power. Because the other prerequisite was every single interviewee had to have a minimum of 5 years in the position, which means that you have clout, you have political carry, you have advocacy, you have that human connection. And so within that, you have this system that you've designed, whether you did it yourself or you figured out how to do that, that allowed students and teams to prosper.
If you're someone of if you're a person of color and you're listening to this podcast right now and you're thinking and you're in education, and you're thinking, well, I feel like the only thing I could ever do, maybe I'll just be a teacher. By the way, just being a teacher is not. I hate that people say that sometimes. It's actually amazing that you're a teacher. But if they're thinking of ways like, how do I get into this? You know, maybe I have to overcome, depending on where they're at in the country. Honestly, you know, they may have to overcome quite a bit. What would be your advice? Like, what is the first step? Kind of like, okay, you know, do this or, you know, get this program, get this degree, or is it about still the relationships? How, you know, how do you get all that to then move forward into a superintendency role?
Yeah. So for me, it was all about learning. And I was always, and I know we have so many things on our plate. Every single person has a lot on their plate. But if you take the opportunity to learn all facets of the job, you're much more prepared for the interview when it's time to do that. And so, for example, bonds, you know, people are, you know, construction in different areas. Like I made sure that I hung out with the facilities guy for quite a bit of time
Learn
to
the language of
understand
it. Yeah.
the language of that. I hung out with the tech team, help me understand the software, the hardware, what's behind it, what happens when the server crashes. Tell me, like, how do I fix that? Or I hung out with the CBO and I said, okay, tell me all about budgets. I want to know everything about it and the intents and purposes behind every budget so that I know how to use money effectively and strategically to meet the needs of kids. So I'm really good with that. And all of that because I took within those 10 years of preparation, like wanting to just hang out with people to learn more about the job. So when I sat at the interview, like my first interview ever, you know, got this job that I have right now. And I was like, wow, like, yeah, I knew quite a bit about it because I asked those questions to prepare myself. Now you're never 100% ready. So any of the listeners that are here, they're saying like, man, I want to do that, but maybe they won't hire me, but maybe they will. Maybe they will. So just put yourself in the hat. And every interview that you go on makes you better for the next one.
Right.
Because you take your notes afterwards and you figure it out. And then AI is here. Like plop in there all the questions that are in a superintendent interview, and what does it say out there
Right.
about what it is? And then you read that, and then you add to it, and then you ask people, you ask me, you ask others about, okay, it's talking about, how you really lean into your emotional intelligence with relationships with labor partners. California's a big labor state. We have to work with our union leaders. So learn about what you can, and then ask people, what do I do to do that? And I'm so willing to help you so that you can get in that position. And also, you're never 100% ready for anything, to be honest.
That is so true.
Anything. So get the job. And then when you're in the job, call me, call Adam, call Carl.
Just
We're
learn.
all about it to help you. And you'll just grow within that capacity and be a stronger leader. So definitely do it, try it. And you may not get hired the first time, but stay in the game. Stay in the game and keep trying, because if that's what sets your heart on fire. Like, I love being a superintendent. Like, I love it. Even when I get knocked down, I'm in the corner licking my wounds like a cat because I get beat up.
Does
When
happen.
it happens. It's like, yeah, but I still want to stay in the game because I love serving kids.
I love
I love it so much.
So, like, let me ask you this: like, you talked about the joy in education, and don't want to be the person who brings the mood down.
Yeah.
But where do
Sure.
you see the next challenges happening in the superintendency? Because right now we are seeing some superintendents deciding that, I've had enough, I'm gonna do something else, or technology leaders, a lot of people in leadership are saying,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna leave the profession to do something else. So what do you see as the next challenge that we're facing in K-12 especially for leadership?
Yeah. Politics.
Yeah.
Red and blue is always going to be a problem wherever you go, unless you're aligned with, the good guys to make
Yeah.
sure that kids are supported. Across the nation, DEI, can't really say diversity, equity, and inclusion. Can't really say
Certain
that.
places you can't.
Yep.
It's true.
CRT, you can't talk about culturally responsive teaching, curriculum, all of that. And so when you realize, okay, United States is a vast
Yeah.
place, and you can go to a certain state and be the true version of yourself
Right.
and really live your best life and take care of kids, or you can stay in a state that might not allow you to do that. Like, knowing about some of the states, I went in to do some keynotes with them to support them with some of the Allah's affinity groups, and I had to give them strategies on how to still be true to yourself
Right.
and advocate for kids, but not use some of those buzzwords that will get you fired.
Right.
Like, I don't have to be concerned in California that I'm going to get fired for saying I want a kid. My hashtag is all means all. Culturally, responsive types of teaching that we want to make sure that every one of our teachers knows and values the kids that come into our school district. And that is just the norm.
Right.
Like, you need to know that every single lesson you design has to have visual supports and English learner strategies embedded. Like, it has to be there. You have to have teacher clarity at the beginning and success criteria and relevance every single lesson. That's not the case everywhere. And so I do believe the nation's crisis is going to be driven by politics. And as a superintendent leader, you have to be good with the board's beliefs and the community's beliefs. So before you even apply, you have to know what you're getting into.
Yep.
And if it's not your jam, don't get yourself in that, because as soon as you get fired as a superintendent, you're toast, because that goes with you and it takes you years to rebuild yourself back after that. So knowing where to go so you can be the best version of yourself and say what you want to say, and go home at the end of the day and know you did your best work. But that will definitely is the demise of a lot of superintendents that are not in the game anymore, because they just can't, boards are different. My board's very supportive and I'm grateful for that, but not every board's like that. And you could have every election, every November.
Yeah, it could always change, right?
Every November, the little unwritten, the real truth is every superintendent has their resume in the top drawer of their desk, ready to dust that sucker off.
Love that. I mean, I don't love that. I love that you give us that tip of knowledge, because I always wonder, like you were saying, how it's great to be the boss, but you still answer to
Oh yeah.
the board, and all it takes is a change of 2 or 3 people.
Yeah,
All of a sudden, your life goes from great to miserable. And
absolutely.
being true to yourself. I mean, not having to act like a certain thing, or I think that gives longevity to the position versus when you have to fake it so much that it just wears you down.
Yeah, for sure. And like right now in California, it's a superintendent's market for sure across the nation, but in California as well. And, there's jobs everywhere, all different sizes. There's 1,200 school districts in California, all different sizes and shapes. But the legislation in California passed a law that was proposed to make sure that superintendents could not be fired unless it was a regularly scheduled board meeting. Because here's what was happening. people were getting elected.
Uh-huh.
As soon as they were elected, the next meeting, all it took was a three, at least the majority vote,
All right.
and you're fired without. Our contracts say with or without cause. So you can get fired for
Wow.
anything. I can be wearing a pink dress that I wore earlier today, and if somebody didn't like it and they wanted to fire me, they could fire me.
To get the
And
right-
they also passed a law saying that you can only earn up until like the end of that term of your salary. Where in the past, when I first started, it was like you could get the entire contract.
Right.
Yeah.
So they
Pay
changed
out,
that.
yeah.
You
Yeah,
out
the
when
pay
you're
out the
only-
salary,
yeah,
yeah.
you're
Golden
full year.
parachute. Yeah.
Now it's only to the end of the year. So slowly things are changing to kind of help support the position to make sure that you are, you're able to serve. But definitely there are some things that, may not make it as a popular job as you would think.
You make it look fun though.
Yeah,
Right?
and
It is
that,
fun. Yeah.
I mean, every time I see you, there's just so much joy, so much energy, even when she's working out. Like,
Even when I'm working
Yeah.
out.
I mean, I've gotten inspired, but I'm close. If anyone could do it, it's Z. You want to ask our typical ending question there, Mr. Dr. File?
and I may have already answered this for you, but
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see about this. We ask all of our guests when they come on, what is something that you do to keep yourself undisrupted?
Mhm. Undisrupted, I think it's going to be family time and of course my working out.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Yes. But the family one is like just so critical. And I was speaking to some people in our session earlier today about, how do you find that balance? And it's not about just the physical fitness for us to be physically fit, but also mentally fit.
Yep.
That's such an underutilized word.
Right.
So that piece of it, to be able to say, in order for me to be mentally fit, I need to give my time to my family because they fill my cup.
Mhm.
So like Friday nights, movie night up until like 4 a.m. with my son, the girls are asleep, but my son is like, all right, let's go, mom, movie night.
Movie
We're gonna
marathon.
drink as much soda as we can, and we're gonna eat as much popcorn and eat as much candy as we can. And I'm like, yes, boy, let's go. And sometimes we beat the sunrise, and sometimes we don't. But it's all through like that wellness.
Yeah.
And he feeds me and I feed him right back, and other things with the kids and the family, and then my pops.
Yeah.
I love my daddy. He's 92 years old, and giving time to him and just listen to the stories and the life experiences. All of that allows me to do the rest.
I love how you had your dad so much a part of your graduations.
So much. Yes.
It was like he graduated too.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, so much. And it was like just the joyful tears in seeing that. And I will tell you this, like when anyone really crosses the stage, your family crosses that stage with you.
Right.
But I will take it an extra when pain and suffering is part of the history of your family. And then for your daddy or your mama to be able to experience that with you, like he crossed that stage and wore that robe and got hooded just as much as I did. And I think when I went to his house, it came in, and I went over to his house, which is just a few doors down from me. And I said, Daddy, I want you to put this on. And he didn't hear me say that, because his hearing isn't so great. He thought he was going to put it on me. And I said, no, you're going to put it on. And I'm going to record you putting it on. And he was like, wait, what? Me? And that, like, just his face was like, wow, he was really proud.
Where can people find out more about all the great things that you're doing, Zandra? Tell us a little bit. Where's the best place for people to find you, follow you,
Yeah.
learn from your fitness and
Oh,
everything?
right. So I'd say Twitter, X, and then LinkedIn would be some great ones. So on Twitter, it's ZJ Galvan, my name on LinkedIn. And then, of course, Facebook and Instagram. I do a little bit of personal, post a lot of personal things on there, and then some professional things too. So it's usually just my full name, or at ZJ Galvan for Twitter, X, and then at Zan Galvan on Instagram.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with our listeners today. And my head is spinning thinking about all the things that you just said you went through. But I promise at some point I'll start actually doing the workouts with you.
We're going to hold you to that.
Okay, I said it on the podcast. It's true now. It's going to happen. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone out there for listening, of course. This is the Undisrupted Podcast brought to you by Alfred. He's Adam, and you can follow him at AskAdam3.
And he's Carl, and you can follow him at Mr. Hooker. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, we are better together
And we are better
undisrupted.